Selling your dental practice is one of the biggest decisions you will make in your dental career. And buying that practice is the biggest. This is Paul, Dr. Nacho Goodman, founder of Dental Nachos and Dentist Job Connect. I am so thrilled to have with me today a transitions expert, key resource and sponsor of our Dental Nachos group to share with us how we can make these decisions with more success and less stress. Welcome to our podcast. I'd like you to share with me who you are and what you do to help dentists.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me on. My name is Tim O'Shaughnessy, and I cover Minnesota for DDS Match.
Awesome. And I frequently talk about my failed dreams, Tim, of wanting to play in the NBA. But when you grow to this size, you got to get new dreams. So I am living my backup dream of bonding dentists together, helping them decrease stress, reduce crying inside. Just walk our audience through, because I think they'd love this insight, like a little bit of your daily day. You're working with buyers, you're working with sellers. We'll talk about the team, but tell us about daily day in the life of Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Paul. The day obviously is full of emails, but I'm always kind of working on the different steps within the transition with different clients. So, we're bringing on listings, we're having conversations with dentists about what they want their transition to look like. And then, of course, we're advertising these positions. So we're talking to buyers. Sometimes we're getting close where we've identified the right match and we're working on LOIs. We're working with the trusted kind of team that a dentist has. So we're communicating with their CPA. We're working with attorneys to make sure that the wishes, are all put in to the contracts. And so it's kind of, the different steps of the transitions with different clients. And we only do represent sellers, but we do a fantastic job working with buyers too. So a lot of my job, Paul, is just educating, talking about what could be, what they want, and trying to find that right match.
I love what you shared there. And so I was assistant coach of a 9 and 10-year-old girls basketball team. And we lost. It's a little emotional, I'm going to say, but we lost in the first round of the playoffs, Tim, by a large
next
margin.
year.
One of the things I share is we needed a lot of help with our fundamentals. Okay. We need a lot of help with our fundamentals. And there's no such thing as reinforcing fundamentals too much, whether it is the 76ers or 9 and 10-year-old girls basketball. So the fundamentals, I'd like you to just highlight, because they don't go over this in dental school. Dentistry is a cave profession, as my friend Dr. Eric Cornelius says. So a dentist can be wildly successful financially, and they can work by themselves for 30 years, and they can have no idea who should be on their team. So when we have a broker like yourself working for the seller, who are some other parts of that team that a seller should be like, hey, I better have this person. I better have this person. If I don't have this person, I got to meet this person. Walk us through that team a little.
Yeah. So, a selling dentist really wants a dental specific CPA and a dental specific attorney on their team. Depending on where they're at, if they're coming to us with that 2 to 3 year window, if they're coming to us sooner, maybe they do want to bring in a dental consultant to finish strong, maybe make their practice more efficient, or expand it to help it look more attractive to a buyer. But for sure, you would want a dental-specific attorney and a dental-specific accountant.
And I like that you said those two, and we've been talking with your amazing colleagues about dental-specific attorney, dental-specific accountant, financial planner, consultant. But those two people that you mentioned, just, because my favorite movie is Philadelphia, and Denzel says in that, Tim explained it to me like I'm a 6-year-old. Those two people are going to be looking at documents, right? Like they are going to be looking at the documents along the way. And when someone says, show this document to your attorney, and you don't have an attorney, that can slow up a deal, I'm assuming. That could wind up costing you morale and money. So I appreciate you highlighting this. Now, I love this question here. And maybe, to be honest, Tim, you could be the first person asking this to the seller in their whole life. What's important in a transition? What is important in a transition? You do this all the time, but the seller's just doing it once. So tell us about what's important.
Yeah, I love having that conversation, and that's what we're at. That's what we're all about at DDS Matches. We want to have that conversation about what you want. If you're looking back 3 years and you're looking at today or looking at the closing of your practice, what would make you happy about that process? So we asked them, have they talked to their financial planner? What is their financial concerns? Do they need maybe to work a little bit longer? but they want to take chips off the table, meaning they want to sell their practice to the next buyer. They maybe want to take a 2-month vacation to Europe, but they still do maybe want to work in the summertime or what have you, or in the wintertime, but probably not in Minnesota here.
Yeah.
And so we really go over what they want. And I think, all of us at DDS Match have a ton of experience. I'm at my 24th year in dentistry. And I used to work elbow to elbow with dentists and trying to meet their dreams of growing a dental practice, starting a dental practice, and expanding dental offices. And now I'm kind of at that last stage of their career where, what do I do now, Tim? How do I retire? So when we start talking about what's important in the dental transition, I really want to start with what's important to that dentist.
Yeah.
And then we make everything fit down the road. So,
and I've been helping the brokers hopefully help you guys talk dentists so that you can, and we have the same issues with patients. You know what I do? I do this thing. I don't try to guess what's in other people's mind. So I do things with implants, and a woman came to me and said, my other dentist never told me about implants. My other dentist never told me about implants. I got these terrible dentures. You know what I thought in my head? I thought she wasn't being truthful, but I didn't say that out loud. I said, that dentist must have told her about implants. Maybe she didn't hear. But I said, I'd treat everybody, give them the chance to say no to the best options. And during the conversation, Tim, she mentioned she had 10 cats, which I think is a very specific number of cats, because that means you had 8 cats and you said, I don't have enough cats. I'm going to get 2 more. So in my mind, I thought, this woman also has 10 cats. But I said, you know what? Let's give her all the options. Went to my office manager. I said, what is the patient with 10 cats going to do? And she said, she's going to bring a check for $30,000 next week to get started on her implants. I said, oh, wow, that surprised me. I've also had patients, Tim, that could buy implants for the whole office because they are multimillionaires walking around with a missing tooth. So when we go back to this world with you, when something's important in a transition, and I just want you to highlight this for buyers and sellers, is it sometimes more than money? Does it have to do with timing of the deal? Does it have to do with, is the team going to stay on? Does it have to do with day stand? Tell us, breakdown. I know we'll talk about value, but in addition to value, what are some of the important things that you've had sellers tell you?
Yeah, so legacy is one. I had one where, the dentist had been there for 41 years and they wanted that dental office to continue. And so that dentist was willing to do whatever it took to help a buyer get going. And that was what was important to them. 9 times out of 10, it's really not about money. It's about the match.
Yeah, I like that.
And it's really about kind of, moving forward and protecting patients, staff, legacy. Maybe they want to retain the building for a little bit so they have some cash flow. There's so many factors that go into it.
And then what I
really,
think, Tim, I
what
want to
listen.
interject is I was just thinking as you said this, you should use that line. It's not always about the money, it's about the match. We can help you at DDS Match. That's a great marketing slogan. The one thing, and I see this in my dental nachos team, and I see this in my dental team, but never so much more with dental, the seller is Ubering off into the sunset, but the team is staying behind. And what I would say to my team is, I'm going to do the best job possible to get you somebody that you want to stay with. Now, it is America, and you cannot require, right? I shouldn't say you can't require, because before I say that, I know there are asset purchase agreements that may come with certain stipulations. But in general, I can't say to my office manager, you're going to love the new owner. But what I can say is, I'm going to work really hard to make sure they're a good match, because I know it's important for you to work here for the next 10 years. And I'll proudly say, I mean, you'll probably say, I took over a practice in 2011. Tim, and the broker said to me, the front desk person won't last 6 months with you. Okay. It was a dual rep broker, wasn't thrilled with the deal. They said the front desk person won't last 6 months with you. They're different than you. They won't last 6 months. 8 years she stayed there. 8 years.
Yeah.
So that just showed that the ability to transition the team is also important in the transition, because these people have lived with you inside of this dental home for years. Tell our audience a little bit about the team with that.
Yeah, that's one thing that really falls under the category of why you really want a broker involved, because I frequently give a lot of advice to buyers. They don't always take it, but one of the things I always say is try not to make any changes to the team for the first year. Try to really listen instead of, come in and change everything. Because this team is part of the asset you bought. You know, we obviously don't sell people in this, but I really try to advise the buyer of how to keep things going, like they were, you know, that they bought this from the seller, and then how do they, you know, realize their dream. And one thing is, you know, a buyer will say to me, well, I really need a cone beam. I really can't practice with the 2D pan. Well, then I'll go out and get a, you know, a blank bid from one of the suppliers that they choose. And then I'll help the bank figure out what that is. So they know, hey, this is a good thing. We're going to loan the money on the practice. We're going to give them some working capital, but we're going to let them buy this thing that'll help them do better dentistry. So I really try to work with the buyer to make the proper steps. So when they do transition, the team stays, the patients want to stay. And that's one of the things that we really do well. So again, we work for the sellers, but we want to do everything possible to help that buyer.
I love that, Tim. One of the things, and this is what I'll call a golden nacho tip, if you could just off the top of your head say about how many transitions have you been involved with, right? It doesn't even have to be all the way. How many have you been? Over 100, would you say?
Yeah, you know, with my 24-year career, even before I was doing transitions, you know, a transition was a big event. And obviously I was in that world of selling supplies and equipment and helping them. That was something I was always involved in. So I've probably been involved in over 100.
So one of the things I'm pointing out to my audience is most dentists only do this once on either side. Most dentists are picking a place to show up to for the next 30 years once. And most sellers are leaving their legacy once. So work with somebody who's done this over 100 times so they can clue you in. If you come to Philadelphia, Tim, and you go, I'm going to figure out how to eat on my own and not listen to Paul Goodman, well, you're foolish, because I've eaten here thousands of times. And I will tell you about this restaurant and that restaurant and the wait time and this, and I will facilitate an amazing dining experience based on your needs, based on how much you want to spend, based on the kind of food that you want. So don't spend more time researching a trip to France dentist than you do on your transition, because I have seen just flat out disastrous stories from both money, timing by people not doing it. Now, next kind of steps here is one, how early should someone start connecting with you in this process? Someone's thinking, oh, I might want to sell my practice 18 months from now. Should they have connected with someone like you by then? Is it too early? Is it too late? Give them a range for when they should start connecting with you.
Yeah, you know, I really like to connect with people in that 5 to 10 year range. I have, Paul, been given 60 days once, and it was because there was an illness, and I ended up bringing 4 offers to the table, and it ultimately didn't work out. But the doctor got to do what he wanted, and again, that's what we're there to do. But that's an awful situation. I had a conversation last night with the doctor that wants to be done by 2026, and that's perfect. We're listed, we're up, and they've given me 2 years to sell their practice. So that's great.
And that's great. I mean, that person's given, as someone who's done this, that's a fun thing to be involved with. You know what? When you feel pressure, it's not fun. It doesn't matter what it is in life, whether it's me having to get to my kid's play, whether it's me having to do a dental procedure. When you feel time pressure, it's not fun. So to help you in the, you know, what previous podcast I said to, you know, one of my broker colleagues, talk dentists, is like, hey, we can't promise you anything, patient, without an x-rays, photos, and things. So same thing for dentists and brokers. We can't promise you a price without getting the data. For you, I would say this. Oh, hey, dentist, do you know like how frustrating it is when someone says, my daughter's getting married in 2 weeks and I got to fix my teeth in the next 2 weeks? Like, how's that feel to you? And they're like, it feels terrible. You had all this time, you know, and that's how dentists make brokers feel when they put them under unfair time pressure. Now, life happens while you're making other treatment plans. That's one of my slogans. So of course, there are things like disabilities, deaths, problems, but most of the time it's inertia. Most of the time it's analysis paralysis. Most of the time it's laziness. One of the best transitions I was involved with ever, Tim, was someone who came to one of my little presentations 2 years before she wanted to sell. She was a pediatric dentist. Then the pandemic happened. Nobody knew that was going to happen. And we sold her practice for an amazing price during the pandemic because she was prepared. She was totally prepared. And she showed up 2 years early. So I love that message from Tim. Do it 5 to 10 years out. Find out where you're at. And as we've talked about, are there times when people want to do it 5 years out, Tim, and then they go back and work on something to make their practice more valuable?
Yeah, a bunch of things come up during that 5 to 10 year range. I had one where they were 4 years out and they said, should I buy a scanner? And I asked them some questions about their usage and what they're doing and what they plan to do with that scanner. And I said, yes. And so now we're at the point where that office has grown the last 2 years. So that's a great story for me to be able to market that practice. We always like one that's trending up. The banks get a little nervous when it's trending down, especially if it's more than 10%. So having the conversation, and again, there's no obligation to have the conversation. There's no cost to it. We would just like to have that conversation with you because ultimately it does lead to a lot less crying inside. It's better for you as the client when you're selling your practice, and it's better for us. I mean, Paul, that people you treatment planned in February or March, and all of a sudden it's the third week in December and they need to get that work done. And, that puts a lot of pressure. Like, do you have room in the schedule? Are you even in town then? So coming to.
And I'll add, sometimes they're asking for things that are impossible. Oh, I want an implant done in place in a week. I said, well, we have 12 weeks healing. So I think that you're sharing on this timeline is so valuable. Kind of our final segment, which I'm excited to talk about is, there's a lot of talk about, so I was a big fan of cartoons. So there was He-Man and Skeletor. I remember him, right? Those two. So, DSOs versus private practice for total domination of the dental universe. And dentists are very dramatic about this. But if I didn't know something, I might be dramatic too. So some dentists will see me at a conference, Tim, and they'll say, hey, Paul, I just want to let you know, I'm never selling to a DSO. And I go, okay, Dr. Smith, what's a DSO? You know what they say? No idea. I have no idea what a DSO is. So let's talk now and deliver some responsible information in the next 5-ish minutes. I'm a dentist. I do $1.4 million a year. I got 5 operatories. I'm in Minnesota. And I'm just like, hey, Tim, can you just tell me what different roads I have here for DSO? Just tell me, just educate me. Let me know what my options are.
Yeah, that's one of the unique things. We do work with private parties, which is the majority of our business, but we also do work with DSOs. And I always tell people, there's so many different types of DSOs out there. I always encourage people to get all the offers that they can, not to limit themselves. Just like you as a dentist, you want to offer all the different procedures you can do, an implant, crown, extraction, whatever. So I always encourage dentists to get all the information and then they choose. The wonderful situation, it's always wonderful to bring multiple buyers to the table. With DSOs, I just really encourage you to have representation. It's come up before. I'm going to get paid 97 times EBITDA, and but there's a -4, and because my practice has shag carpeting, that takes a little bit off, and so really having a broker or a professional like from DDS Match will help you kind of weed through the offers, because this is not apples to apples. This is apples, oranges, grapefruit, and every sort of kiwi you can throw in.
And also, you know what, Tim? What if I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Truman Show, but it's one of my favorite movies with Jim Carrey. Like, what if everything in life is just made up? And I know this sounds very out of left field, but my reason, because I have the shirt, biceps and EBITDA. I don't know if this has happened to you, Tim. I hope I got to sit down for this. Have you ever shown the same practice to do two different DSOs and they've come up with a different EBITDA number? Has that ever happened?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's EBITDA. It's written in stone, right?
No,
it is stone.
EBITDA is very negotiable. And there's add backs, like the DSO will get a better deal on supplies, than your 8 to 10% that you're paying. So we can slide a little more EBITDA, this way. And so, no, it's very negotiable. And then there's always, it's called a TTM period. It's a trailing 12-month period. And you always want to look when you're taking that for the EBITDA calculation. And those are just two things that can slide the whole EBITDA valuation around.
And that's why I say this, with this tongue-in-cheek thing, because everything's pretty much made up, no matter what people say, right? It's pretty much made up, because I went to a national brokers conference as the keynote speaker, and the greatest thing happened, because I don't know if you hear this popular study, about 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Trident, but 1 is against Trident, right? And if we actually asked real dentists, there'd be more fighting. And they showed a group of brokers that had a fun game, a practice that was a real practice that was really sold. And they asked these brokers that do this for their life all the time to come up with a value of what it could be sold for. And I'm not sure if you are shocked. Nobody came up with the same value. Okay.
Yeah.
So what DSOs are the same way that, and again, we play this game together, so we know some of the same fun. Like I tell buyers, if one bank gives you a 4% interest rate, which I know below now, and one's 5%, it doesn't make the 4% automatically better, right? It doesn't, because it's about the terms of the deal. Tell our audience how important are the terms of the deal when you sell to a DSO.
Oh, well, they're incredibly important. So, there's cash at close, and then sometimes there's a holdback where you're kind of even loaning money to the buyer, so to speak. And then there's hurdles if you grow. There's stock options. There's push and pull with those stock options. Like, can you get out when it gets recapitalized? So it really is kind of crazy. And the same thing, as you brought up, goes with banks. This bank needs a 15% seller carry, but I've got some money from an economic development association, and that'll cover, the amount of the down payment so the seller can get released. I mean, it really is all over the board.
And I love this conversation as kind of my finalist question for you, Tim. Finalist theme is DSOs get a lot of attention, right? And they are big ones, small ones, medium ones, bigger fish, smaller fish. I'm going to start a DSO. I'm going to call it third bite of the apple. No one's ever thought of that. Third bite of the apple. When talking about the second, I want the third. But in this world, I want you to talk to that private practice dentist. We just talked about DSOs. But why do you think you're doing mostly private practice deals? If you're looking at the deals that come across the DDS match group, right? And I know your founder, Thad Miller, talked about this at the meeting. Most of them are private practice. Why do you think that is?
A lot of people thought, and this is just my 2 cents worth, a lot of people thought the DSOs were going to take over dentistry. And I don't know if you're familiar with craft beer, but they thought craft beer was going to take over the beer industry. And it's kind of one of those things. The craft industry slid up to about 18% and they slid back. And I do feel it's the same with the DSOs. Dentists like control. It's their two hands that are producing all this with the help of a team. So, I feel that there's a place for all models in dentistry, and I encourage everybody to find their best match or what their fit is.
I love that, Sharon. You have so much knowledge in dentistry. As I wrap up, I'm Tim. I hope you don't think I'm irresponsible. But for many years, I placed a lot of implants without a CBCT. For many years, I did not use a CBCT. And do you want to know why? They weren't invented yet. Okay, so it's very hard to use something that's not invented. So back in the early 2000s, getting a CBCT meant getting 57 films made by a hospital and trying to look through films. And now they're in our offices. So I want to say that what I'm about to say now could change over time. But if you're a private practice buyer or seller, and as someone who's a private practitioner currently at this time, the main reason, Tim, I believe that private practice deals are still much more prevalent than DSO deals is by the time the seller wants to transition, staying for 3 to 5 years is not in their treatment plan. It's just not. And it doesn't matter if you tell them 18x EBITDA, and it doesn't matter if they get 42% in the parent company and 18% in the uncle company. It doesn't matter. I'm a dentist and I know how dentists feel. And most of these dentists, when you say to them, hey, if you want to consider a DSO sale, you must say 3 to 5 years. They say, take it right off the table. Yeah. Because whether it's their spouse who wants to move, whether it's them want to be done. And that to me is the opening for private practice buyers to share their worth. So that's my final words. Well, Tim, you've shared so much with us. I appreciate you supporting all that we do. Just remind our audience, which region do you cover for the DDS Match team?
Yes, my name is Tim O'Shaughnessy, and I cover Minnesota for DDS Match.
Awesome, Tim. And anyone who wants to connect with us, please text BUY to 215-543-6454 or text cell to 215-543-6454, or just simply reach out to us at dentalnachos.com to get connected. Thanks so much, Tim.
Thanks, Paul.